This is going to sound cold, but I need to know if I made the right call. 18 months after my ex-girlfriend told me she had cheat if I took a high-paying job that required travel, I am living a life I never thought possible, and people keep telling me I should have compromised or worked it out. Honestly, I am starting to wonder if I am too pragmatic about relationships, but the data keeps proving I made the correct decision. I am Garrison Kincaid, 32. Work as a project manager for a heavy industrial construction company. I started as a millwright apprentice at 19, worked my way through every position on the floor, and eventually moved into project coordination without a formal engineering degree. Just experience, problem-solving skills, and the ability to see how complex systems fit together. 18 months ago, my relationship with Presley Carmichael ended over a job offer. Not because the job was dangerous or illegal or morally questionable, but because it required me to be away from Denver for extended periods. The offer was $640,000 annually, more than double what I was making, with a schedule of 4 months on site, 1 month off. The work sites were remote, harsh conditions, places like the high Arctic in Alaska, offshore platforms, mining operations in places most people cannot find on a map. Presley's response to this opportunity wasn't concern for my safety or questions about the long-term career trajectory. It was an ultimatum: turn down the offer, or she would find human company elsewhere while I was gone. Not a conversation about whether we could make long-distance work, not a discussion about what we would do with the massive increase in income. Just a straightforward threat that my absence would justify infidelity. I handled it the way I handle construction problems, assessed the structural integrity of what we had built, recognized the foundation was compromised, calculated whether repairs were possible, and determined the relationship was unsalvageable. I accepted the job, ended the relationship that same night, and left for the Arctic 2 weeks later. For 18 months, I have stuck to that decision, worked brutal rotations in some of the harshest environments on Earth, banked more money than I ever thought I would see, traveled to places I had only read about, and built a life that looks nothing like what I had in Denver. The no-contact thing wasn't about being vindictive. It was about recognizing that some relationships reveal fundamental incompatibilities that cannot be negotiated away. Which brings me to last week. I heard through mutual friends that Presley's been asking about me, telling people I abandoned our relationship for money, that I chose a job over her. And apparently, some people believe that narrative. Let me explain what actually happened, because the details matter more than the dollar amount. I had been working for a mid-sized construction firm in Denver for 8 years, earning $95,000 annually as a project coordinator. Good money, steady work, but nothing exceptional. Denver's expensive. Rent was eating a huge chunk of my paycheck. Student loans from my brief attempt at college were still hanging around, and I had accumulated about $35 in credit card debt from various life emergencies and poor decisions in my 20s. Presley and I had been together for 3 years. We met through mutual friends, started dating when I was still working floor jobs, and stayed together as I moved up into coordination and eventually project management. She worked as an administrative assistant for a dental office, made about $42 a year, and we lived together in a 1-bedroom apartment in a part of Denver that was up and coming, which means it hadn't been gentrified yet but was getting there. The relationship was comfortable. Not passionate, not particularly deep, but functional. We split bills, had our routines, watched television together, went out with friends on weekends. It worked as long as nothing changed and nobody wanted more than what we had. Then I got the call from a recruiter I had worked with years ago. He had a client, an international heavy construction consortium that was building infrastructure projects in extreme environments. They needed someone with my specific combination of skills: millwright background, project coordination experience, ability to work with international teams, and willingness to go where most people wouldn't. The base salary was $640,000 annually. The rotation was 4 months on site, 1 month home, all travel, accommodations, and meals covered while working. Hazard bonuses for certain locations, potential for contract extensions, and increases based on performance. I ran the numbers immediately, the way I approach any major decision. In 2 years, I could pay off every debt I had, including my student loans and credit cards. I could save a 6-month emergency fund. I could put a down payment on a house in Denver that wouldn't be in an up-and-coming neighborhood. After that, I could bank most of the salary for early retirement, investment property, or whatever came next. The work would be difficult. Arctic conditions, limited communication with the outside world during rotations, physical and mental stress. But I had worked brutal construction jobs my entire adult life. This was just more money for the same kind of challenges. I told Presley about the offer that night, expecting her to be excited. We had talked about how tight money was, how frustrating it was to work full-time and still feel financially unstable. This was the solution. Her response: 4 months. You would be gone for 4 months at a time. Yeah, but I would have a full month off between rotations. We could travel during those months, see places we have only talked about, and the money would change everything. We could actually build something instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck. She didn't look at the numbers I had pulled up on my laptop. She didn't ask about the career trajectory or what it could lead to. She just said, "I cannot do 4 months alone. Gare, that is too long." I spent the next week trying to help Presley see the opportunity the same way I did. Not pushing, just laying out the facts like I would with a construction proposal. Look at this. I showed her the budget I had mapped out. 2 years, and we are debt-free. Completely. Your student loans, my student loans, credit cards, everything. After that, we are just accumulating wealth. We could buy a house outright, no mortgage. Think about what that means for our stress levels, our options, our future. She looked at the spreadsheet for maybe 10 seconds. I don't care about being debt-free 2 years from now. I care about being alone for 4 months at a stretch. You wouldn't be alone. You would be in the apartment. You could invite friends over whenever you wanted. Have the space to yourself. And I would be back for an entire month. Most people don't get a month of vacation time. It is not the same. What if we got a dog? I offered, trying to find solutions. Something to keep you company, give you a reason to get out and walk every day. I don't want a dog, Gare. I want my boyfriend. I had still be your boyfriend. Just because I am working doesn't change that. She went quiet for a moment, then said something that should have ended it right there. You are asking me to put my life on hold for 4 months at a time so you can go make money. That is not fair to me. I didn't see it as putting her life on hold. I saw it as an investment in our future. But I tried to understand her perspective, tried to find middle ground. What if you came with me sometimes? I suggested. During the off-rotations, we could meet in different places. Instead of flying back to Denver every time, I could fly to wherever you wanted to go. Europe, Asia, South America. Turn the month off into an actual adventure. I have a job. Gare, I cannot just take off for a month. You could find remote work, or take a sabbatical. With what I would be making, you wouldn't have to work at all if you didn't want to. That is when her expression changed. Not excitement, but something else. Suspicion, maybe. You want me to be financially dependent on you? That is not what I am saying. I am saying the money gives us options. You could pursue something you actually care about instead of just working to pay bills. Isn't that better? She didn't answer that. Instead, she said, 4 months is a long time. Gare, a really long time. I should have caught the tone. Should have recognized what she was really saying. But I was focused on the logic, on making the numbers work, on building something better than what we had. 2 weeks after I first told her about the offer, I had to give the consortium my answer. The recruiter was calling daily, saying they needed to move forward, that they had other candidates if I wasn't interested. I sat down with Presley on a Sunday night, the deadline 48 hours away, and tried one last time. I need to give them an answer. I have run every possible scenario, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. This is the opportunity that changes everything. Not just for me, for us. We take this seriously for 2 years, and we set ourselves up for the next 20. Presley looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not angry, not sad, just resolved. I need human company, Gare. I need warmth and touch, and someone actually present. 4 months is too long for me to go without that. I would be back every month. That is more than a lot of couples get. It is not enough for me. I felt something shift in my chest, the way you feel when a load calculation is off, and you realize the structure isn't going to hold. What are you saying? I am saying if you take this job and leave me here for 4 months at a time, I cannot promise I will be faithful. I am not a nun, Gare. I have needs, and I am not going to suppress them just because you want to chase money in the Arctic. There it was. Not a discussion, not a compromise, just an ultimatum with a clearly stated consequence. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, running the calculations one final time. Could we work through this? Was there any scenario where her position and mine were compatible? The data was clear. She was telling me that her short-term comfort was more important than our long-term stability, that she would rather maintain the status quo of financial stress and limited options than endure temporary separation for massive gain. And more than that, she was telling me that fidelity was conditional, dependent on my physical presence rather than our commitment to each other. Okay, I said. I understand completely. She looked relieved. So you will turn it down. Number, I understand that you have told me exactly who you are and what your priorities are. I accept the job, and I accept that this relationship is over. Her face went through several expressions. Confusion, disbelief, then panic. Wait, what? That is not what I meant. I was just trying to make you understand how hard this would be for me. I do understand. You told me that if I am not physically present, you will find someone who is. That is valuable information. It tells me this relationship isn't built on anything solid enough to handle temporary distance. Gare. You are twisting my words. I didn't mean I would definitely cheat. I just meant I cannot make promises about something that far in the future. Right? You cannot promise fidelity over a 4-month period. That is the structural weakness I needed to identify. Thank you for being honest about it. I stood up, went to the bedroom, and started packing essentials. Clothes, documents, laptop, external hard drive. Everything important fit in 2 duffel bags. She followed me, her tone shifting from panic to anger. You are seriously breaking up with me because I was honest about my needs. I am breaking up with you because our needs are incompatible. You need constant physical presence. I need a partner who can handle temporary distance for shared long-term gain. Neither of us is wrong, but we cannot both be right in the same relationship. This is about money. You are choosing money over me. This is about priorities. The money represents freedom from debt, options we don't currently have, and the ability to build something sustainable. You are choosing immediate comfort over future stability. We are running different programs, and they are producing incompatible outputs. I walked toward the door with my bags. She blocked my path. Where are you going? Hotel tonight. I will coordinate moving my remaining stuff out next week. The lease is in both our names, but I will cover my half through the end of the term. After that, it is yours if you want it, or we both walk and lose the deposit. Your choice. You cannot just leave. Watch me. I moved around her, walked out, and didn't look back. She sent 67 text messages over the next 3 days. They followed a pattern: apologies that blamed me for misunderstanding, anger about me being cold and calculating, bargaining where she said she would try to make long-distance work, more anger when I didn't respond, and finally threats that she would tell everyone what kind of person I really was. I didn't block her immediately. I saved every message as documentation, just in case. Then I blocked her number, blocked her on every platform, and focused on preparation for the job. 2 weeks later, I flew to Alaska for my first rotation. 4 months in the high Arctic changes your perspective on what matters. When you are working 12-hour shifts in conditions that can kill you if you make a mistake. When your entire world is a construction site and a barracks and nothing else, you stop thinking about relationship drama pretty quickly. The work was brutal, but straightforward. We were building infrastructure for a mining operation, setting up the foundation systems that would support extraction equipment worth hundreds of millions. My role was coordinating between the engineering team, the construction crews, and the logistics people, making sure materials arrived when needed, despite being hundreds of miles from the nearest real city. The crew was international. Canadians, Norwegians, a few Americans like me, some Australians who had worked every remote site on Earth. Everyone there had made the same calculation I had: exchange comfort and normal life for money and career advancement that wouldn't be possible anywhere else. Nobody talked much about their personal lives. What was the point? We were all there for the same reason, and dwelling on what we had left behind just made the work harder. I saved everything. Every paycheck went straight to debt or savings. No spending on anything unnecessary, because there was nowhere to spend it anyway. 4 months of living like that, and I had knocked out $40,000 in debt and built a savings cushion I had never had before. When the rotation ended and I flew back to civilization, I didn't go to Denver. The apartment held nothing I needed. and Presley had made it clear through mutual friends that she didn't want to see me. Instead, I flew to Iceland. Spent a week seeing the northern lights, hiking glaciers, sitting in hot springs, and thinking about absolutely nothing related to construction or relationships or money. Just existed in a place where the landscape was more extreme than anything humans had built. That week taught me something important. The money wasn't just about financial freedom. It was about the freedom to stand in a place most people only saw in photographs and not worry about whether I could afford to be there. 18 months into the contract, I have completed 6 rotations. Each one follows the same pattern. 4 months of focused work in extreme conditions, 1 month of intentional living in places I choose deliberately. I have watched the northern lights from 3 different countries, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro during one-off rotation, spent 3 weeks in Japan, taking my time with the culture instead of rushing through tourist sites, hiked sections of the Inca Trail, learned to scuba dive in Indonesia. Every friend I made during these trips had something in common. They had chosen to prioritize experiences over conventional stability. The Australian lawyer I met in Tanzania was taking a sabbatical to work on conservation projects. The Norwegian engineer I hiked with in Peru had structured his career around contracts that gave him months off between jobs. The Canadian teacher I met in Japan spent her summers traveling and her school years saving money for the next adventure. None of them thought I was weird or cold or calculating for ending a relationship over an ultimatum. They understood immediately that Presley's position wasn't about missing me. It was about wanting to control my choices through emotional leverage. Back in Denver, the apartment lease had ended. I kept a storage unit with my remaining possessions, but maintained no permanent address. I was building a life that didn't require one. My debt disappeared completely. Student loans, credit cards, everything. After 14 months, I reached a net worth of 0, which felt better than any amount of money I had ever earned before. After that, every dollar earned was pure accumulation. I started looking at property, not in Denver, but in places where the cost of living made sense. Found a small house in the mountains, 2 hours from Denver, paid cash for it, and had something I actually owned. No mortgage, no landlord. Just property I could return to when I wanted roots. During one rotation, I got an email from Derek, a mutual friend from Denver, who had stayed neutral after the breakup. He would run into Presley at a bar. She was seeing someone, a real estate agent, who seemed nice but boring according to Derek. She had asked about me, whether I was still doing the Arctic job, whether I was seeing anyone. Derek asked if I wanted him to pass along any message. I told him no. There was nothing to say. That chapter was closed, and I had no interest in reopening it. I am writing this from a coffee shop in Christchurch, New Zealand. Just finished my 6th rotation and decided to spend this off month exploring the South Island. Tomorrow, I am driving to Mount Cook, then down to Queenstown, then across to Milford Sound. 3 weeks of seeing landscapes that look like they belong in fantasy films. Last week, I got an unexpected message from Presley. Not directly, she is still blocked, but through an intermediary. Apparently, she heard about the house I bought and wanted to know if I would be interested in reconnecting when I am back in Colorado. The answer is no, obviously. But it made me think about what happened 18 months ago and why people keep telling me I was too harsh, too cold, too quick to end things. Here is what they don't understand. Presley's ultimatum wasn't about love or commitment or even about missing me. It was about control. She wanted to dictate my career choices by threatening the relationship. And when that threat didn't work, when I called what she thought was a bluff, she realized she had lost leverage. If I had turned down the job, we'd still be in that apartment in Denver, still drowning in debt, still arguing about money. And she would know that whenever she wanted me to do something, all she had to do was threaten to leave or cheat, and I had fold. That is not a relationship. That is hostage negotiation. The life I have now wouldn't exist if I had compromised. I had still be making $95,000, still stressed about bills, still feeling like I was one emergency away from financial collapse. Instead, I have banked enough money to retire at 40 if I want to. I have seen places most people only dream about. I have built friendships with people who share my values about independence and intentional living. Through Derek, I heard the details of Presley's life, still working the same administrative job, still renting, the real estate agent boyfriend lasted 6 months before she realized he wasn't ambitious enough. She is dating someone new now. A middle manager at a tech startup who is nice but not as driven as I would like, according to Derek's summary. She is not unhappy, from what I can tell, but she is also not growing. She is living the same life she was living 3 years ago, just with different people filling the same roles. Meanwhile, I am in New Zealand planning my next rotation. The consortium wants me in South America this time, overseeing a hydroelectric project in Chile. Another 4 months, another massive check, another opportunity to see parts of the world most people will never access. After Chile, I am thinking about taking a full year off. I have got enough saved now that I don't need to work again if I don't want to. Maybe I will get a graduate degree. Maybe I will start consulting for projects I find interesting. Maybe I will just travel until I get bored and want to go back to building things. The point is, I have options I wouldn't have if I had stayed with someone who valued her comfort over our collective potential. People ask if I regret the breakup. The question doesn't make sense to me. Regret implies I lost something valuable. But what I lost was an anchor attached to a sinking ship. You don't regret cutting yourself loose before you drown. Sometimes I wonder if Presley regrets it. If she thinks about the life she could have had if she had been willing to tolerate 4 months of distance for massive financial gain, and the freedom that comes with it. If she calculates what it cost her to prioritize immediate comfort over delayed gratification. But that is her calculation to make, not mine. Final status: debt-free, property owner, financially independent, living intentionally, no regrets, no interest in reconnecting with people who tried to leverage relationships for control. Some foundations are too weak to build on. Better to identify that early and start fresh on solid ground.